Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It is me, Sal Vetri, and today we are going to take our final thoughts, or my final thoughts, on this Week 4 NFL slate, position by position. If you're new here, welcome. We literally just hit 10,000 subscribers this week on this channel in less than 1 year, so thank you all so much. I really appreciate the support. Thanks to that, I'm going to be having $100 off my NFL Daily Fantasy course for the next week. I'm also going to be giving away one free entry into that course, so you can comment down below if you do want to get into that raffle. Who do you think is going to be the best value, point per dollar? It could be all the way up at the top end in price. It could be all the way up at the bottom end for the wide receiver position. Let me know to have a chance to get in for a free course. I'll be announcing that on our first look video on Monday. And then you could also $100 off the course. If you want that $100 off the course, let me know. Down below in the comments, comment that you would like the coupon, and I'll send it to you. I'll be giving away more stuff next week for this 10,000 subscribers. So thank you all so much. This is a dream come true. Really doing this as a career has been so fun. I have exclusive content linked down below, so it's Thursday afternoon, right? These are my final thoughts, but I'm going to be finding more information and maybe filtering my player pool down even more. My projections as well, those are all out on Patreon, and any takes later in the week will be out on Patreon, including an ownership show tomorrow, and a lot of other exclusive content that is behind only for patrons on Patreon. So you can check that out, link down below. Follow me on Twitter at SalVetriDFS. Some freebies in the giveaway. Freebies and the giveaway are linked up in the description, so you can check that out. But thank you for being here. Hit the subscribe button. Become a part of this community if you get any value from me at all. I really do appreciate it. And before we get into it, I do want to thank our sponsor, FantasyDraft. Look, they continue to run fantastic contests in terms of the rake, in terms of it being rake-free, especially if you're going to be getting a lot of money down on Draftkings. You're going to save so much in terms of the management fees from just playing over on FantasyDraft. I've been getting all of my, I usually only play Draftkings only. I'm not really a fan of FanDuel. I've been getting a lot more of my initial entries down on FantasyDraft. I mean, that main contest that they have over there is just so good. It's linked up down below if you do want to get into it. Just a ton of money. You're saving yourself like a minimum of 20%, upwards of 30% based on the similar rate that's going into the Millie Maker and contests like that on DraftKings. I like DraftKings, but I'm really trying to be disciplined and just play in higher upside tournaments over on FantasyDraft. I'm happy to have them as a sponsor of this show. If you've been watching me, you know that I only get sponsors that I think are actually going to bring value to the viewers. And FantasyDraft, without a doubt, is saving you money if you put your money over there rather than on DraftKings. The rake is just ridiculous, which is management fees. They're going to take 20-30% on DraftKings compared to like 0%. Yes, 3% if you really want to count processing fees on FantasyDraft, like some people in the comments are saying. It's not even close. It's crazy. But yeah, check them out. They're linked down below. Definitely recommend their format. Definitely recommend their contests over there. Really like it. So, with that said, let's get into this position by position. These are my interests. If you want my notes, they're over on game by game notes. It's a 10-page document for every single game. It's over on Patreon. It's Patreon exclusive. All the work I do gets put over there for our patrons, trying to give as much value as I can. But these are my interests at quarterback. I try to tighten the pool a lot. I'm down to 7 quarterback interests, 5 yeses, 2 maybes. Look, Patrick Mahomes is in a fantastic spot as always. He's in a dome. Man's only played once in his life in a dome, and he threw for like 600 yards and I don't even know how many touchdowns in college. Will that correlate to the NFL? Probably not, but this guy literally breaks all projection systems. Once again, he's my highest projected points player on the slate. Gets a matchup against a middle-of-the-pack pass defense, and if they're not going to have Darius Slay this weekend, it's going to probably dip a little bit below average. So Patrick Mahomes, if you want to pay for him, you can. I don't like paying up in cash, but in tournaments, he's always in play. I'm never going to say anything bad about the guy. He's like, if you don't get 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, it's like odd, right? Which is a very good game for quarterbacks in the NFL. It's kind of like, okay, I know you're going to get me that. Well, can you go for 500? Let's see. So he's always in play. Right now, I'll rank my quarterbacks as it is Thursday, not an official ranking, but my first interest is Russell Wilson, then Daniel Jones, then Phillip Rivers, then Jared Goff, then Mahomes. Jared Goff, nice matchup against Tampa Bay. They're not going to be able to run. Even if Todd Gurley is healthy, they're not going to be able to run on this front. Vita Vea leads this front 7, leads this defensive line. They're very stout, this rush defense for Tampa Bay. Their passing defense, though, secondary, bottom 10 in the league. So a really good spot for Jared Goff at home where he performs a lot better with all of his wide receivers, the trio of wide receivers there. I think he's definitely in play. Phillip Rivers, obviously in play against Miami. They gave up top 5 yardage to the passing game each week so far through 3 weeks. The worst week that a quarterback has had is Tom Brady, where he scored 25 fantasy points week 2 against them. Phillip Rivers, it's fine to get to, ranked as my number 3 quarterback right now. Russell Wilson, my favorite spot. It's just a huge pace-up spot against an Arizona defense that gives up the second most points to the quarterback position. Miami against Rivers, 30.6 DraftKings points per game through 3 weeks. Arizona, 30.3, so it's pretty much a toss-up. These teams are terrible against the quarterback. Russell Wilson, we saw him finally get involved with the rushing upside last week. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, which we really didn't. We didn't see two rushing touchdowns all of last year. We've seen him running the ball a little bit more now. Really like this spot for Russell Wilson. If we quickly go over, he's averaging 27 rushing yards a game, as you can see here on my sheet. On this slate, that's top 5 for the quarterback position, on a slate where you do have running quarterbacks, right? Obviously, Lamar Jackson's on the slate, Josh Allen's on the slate. So really good to see that he's kind of putting in a floor of 3 points just on the ground alone, which we know is 75 passing yards coming off of a career game. Really like the matchup for Russell Wilson. Daniel Jones, it doesn't get much better for Daniel Jones after having just what could be honestly like a career game, 4 total touchdowns, over 300 passing yards, leading your way back from an 18-point deficit in your first ever game, over 30 fantasy points. Just really, really good spot. And now he gets to go up against Washington's secondary, which is just atrocious. Josh Norman is atrocious. Everybody in the secondary is so bad. And he actually has weapons. Yeah, Saquon Barkley's injured, but you have Sterling Shepard. You have Evan Ingram. You have 2 pieces that, yes, can move the ball as they did last week. And really, it's the price point. $5,300 for a guy, in my opinion, who should probably be $6,000 for this matchup, and he has mobility against a bottom 5 pass rush in Washington, against a bottom 5 pass coverage in Washington. I really like this spot for Daniel Jones, especially when you consider the price. Lamar Jackson's going to be in play for me if this secondary for Cleveland is still banged up. As of Wednesday, stud cornerback Denzel Ward did not practice. Greedy Williams did not practice. Demarius Randall did not practice. And Morgan Burnett did not practice. All 4 guys that missed the game Sunday night against the Rams, where Jared Goff had a good game. 2 wide receivers went for 100-plus yards against just a secondary that was pretty much to all of their secondary unit players. So if you have Denzel Ward out, my interest in Lamar Jackson goes up. If you have Greedy Williams and more of those DBs out, it goes up even more. Matt Ryan right now is like my last interest, short of a fringy play. Probably don't get there as much. Tennessee's front is pretty good, but for the most part, their slot receiver Logan Ryan is very good. He'll face up against Mohamed Sanu. But outside on the sides, they have Adore Jackson, who's very average, better than last year so far this year. And then you have Malcolm Butler, who just looks terrible. So he does have an advantage on the outsides there. He has Austin Hooper on the inside. Not a great matchup for Hooper. But overall, I think Matt Ryan at his price point is a fringy play, just when you factor in the rest of the guys in his price range, right? Russell Wilson right there, Philip Rivers, even Jared Goff, and Daniel Jones cheaper. I prefer those guys. Case Keenum was found in a walking boot. Not found, but right, he was in a walking boot. $4,900. I think it's a good spot for him. But as of right now, I have to see more. It's Thursday. My final thoughts for today are if he's going to be injured and I really don't need to force him into my lineups. Really good spot for Case Keenum, but if he's in a walking boot come Thursday, that's not great. Deshaun Watson, I always get to a few Deshaun Watson lineups, but he's not somebody I'm going to be prioritizing. Like, I'll have Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins stacks every single week in like a 3-max, at least one of them, but not something I prioritize. So that's where we're at with quarterbacks. It's a pretty thin group, honestly, and I kind of rank it as of right now. Russell Wilson, Daniel Jones, Philip Rivers, Jared Goff, then Mahomes. But that's not like there's any huge difference between a lot of those guys. Like Mahomes being ranked 5th is not to slight him. It's just really a pricing play. All right, running backs. I shaved the pool down a little bit, but you can see a lot of yeses. I'll have my official rankings and tiers. My projections are already up on Patreon if you want to see just how much I differentiate. Christian McCaffrey, the best stud on the slate. Houston is just bottom 10 in run defense right now. Bottom 5, really. DJ Reader on the inside is very good, but outside of that, their outsides aren't great. Like, they have good edge rushers, Mercilus and J.J. Watt, but in terms of pass or run stop, it's just DJ Reader. Everybody else has been pretty atrocious. So Christian McCaffrey, in the receiving game, we know there's upside there. Now, they're going to be down a lineman here, an offensive guard. Carolina more than likely in the concussion protocol. So I think that hurts a little bit, but McCaffrey's upside comes from on the outside and definitely in the receiving game. So we know he has a huge floor and a huge ceiling, in my opinion. David Johnson is leading the entire NFL for running backs in routes run. And this is with him missing a quarter and a half, week 2. That's crazy. So now he gets a matchup against Seattle. I think I prefer the passing game options here for Arizona in this game, but a huge pace-up spot. And if David Johnson's going to be used this much as a wide receiver, he's getting elite usage like he did 3 years ago when he was going off as the best running back in the league. So on terms of on the ground, he's seeing a less than 10% run block. In terms of stuff rate is only 10%, so only 1 out of 10 of his rushes are getting stuffed. It's just a matter of how often are they going to run the ball. Doesn't seem like they want to run the ball that much, but if he's being used in the receiving game on a week where you don't have as many running back options, I think it's a pretty good spot. Marlon Mack, fantastic spot, leading the league in rushing attempts with 61. He gets Oakland, who right now is bottom 3 in rush defense. He gets Oakland, who just overall right now it has a limited defensive skill set. Like, there's not a lot of guys there due to injuries and just really cutting guys and letting people go on this defensive line. And Marlon Mack's coming to town where there's probably no T.Y. Hilton for Indy. They're already a run-heavy team. T.Y. Hilton by far leads all receiving options on that team in routes run and just targets. If he's out, which it seems like he is trending out, this just might be a spot where you have a decent-sized home favorite for Marlon Mack and the Indianapolis Colts where they just rely on the run. I imagine last week you saw Marlon Mack have 18 total touches in a week where he was hurt. I imagine you see close to 20 touches this week for Marlon Mack in a very favorable spot. I like this spot a ton for Marlon Mack. He is running the 17th most routes in the league for a running back. Not great. but he's actually staying on the field on third downs, which is important. Nyheim Hines, who was depicted as this better pass-catching running back, is 45th in routes run in the league for a running back. So he's not even staying on the field at all, Nyheim Hines. You're getting Marlon Mack as a 3-down back for only 6,100. It seems like a smash spot for me. Kerryon Johnson, not a good spot in terms of Kansas City. If they get up quick 14-0, it can isolate the running back like we saw Josh Jacobs a few weeks ago. But Kerryon, coming off career highs, 75% of the snaps, 20 touches on the ground. In Kansas City this year, and also dating back to week 1 last year, is dead last in rush defense per Pro Football Focus and even Football Outsiders DVOA. They're terrible against the run. If this game stays close at all, or if Kerryon just at least early on gets touches, it's a really good spot at 5,400 for a guy who should be low owned. Justin Jackson I like a lot. Austin Eckler I like a lot. Here's something that's interesting that I'm thinking about. Melvin Gordon's going to be coming back next week. That's going to make Justin Jackson irrelevant in this backfield. He might touch the ball 2 times a game, if that. They might just say, you know what? We know Justin Jackson's not going to get to play a lot. We know he's talented. Why don't we just try and design more plays for him in this game? He saw 35% of the snaps, 65% for Eckler last week. So my concern is that, what if Justin Jackson sees 50% of the snaps this week? I mean, we saw Tony Pollard get a lot of touches last week because they got up big in the second half, Dallas, and that was with the game being close in the first half. What happens if the Chargers take control of this game, as they should, and you have Justin Jackson in the second half getting a lot more touches, and also since he's really not going to get to play all that much for the rest of the year with Melvin Gordon coming back, you might see some more designed runs for Justin Jackson. I think this could be a real 60-40 split, if not more, if it turns into a blowout. So I like Justin Jackson a ton at this price point. He's already had 2 rushing touchdowns called back this year. Miami gives up over 200 yards a game to the running back position, or just yardage on the ground, rushing yards, which is the highest in the league. Not a good spot overall for this Miami defense with 2 quality running backs coming in. I think Justin Jackson's price is probably $700 too cheap. Like if he scores both of those rushing touchdowns that got called back for just holding penalties that really weren't involving of the play, like really turning out the difference of the play, wasn't really impacting it, then he might actually be like $5,000 this week because his fantasy points would clearly be like 14 points higher, and Draftkings would react to that. So I think Justin Jackson in tournaments is a good play. Austin Eckler, for sure, he grades out right now just as a sneak peek as my highest projected running back, even more than Christian McCaffrey. I imagine Austin Eckler sees more touches than he did last week. You probably see him getting 18 touches on the ground this week. He's already seen 6 targets per game so far. He leads all running backs in yards per route run, meaning that the routes that he's running a lot. He's top 10 in that department. We talked about David Johnson being number 1. He's top 10 in that department, but he's being the most effective with them. He's running routes and actually gaining yards on those routes, which is a predictor of how much success you will have on Draftkings. So I love that as well. Wayne Gallman's chalk city right now, second highest owned player on the slate from what I'm seeing. Wayne Gallman is a yes for me still, though. 4,600, great cash play. I have him projected for 18 touches. Yes, 18 touches. He's going to stay on the field 90% of the time. They have a fullback in Elijah Penny, and they're calling up Hilliman. And they don't really trust Hilliman all that much. He didn't play in the preseason. They didn't like him, and there was reports in camp that he couldn't hold on to the ball or pass protect. Wayne Gallman is an above-average pass protector, so he's definitely going to stay on the field to protect this new franchise quarterback, Daniel Jones. Wayne Gallman is an average running back between the tackles, and he's probably a slightly below-average pass-catching running back, but I still have him projected for 2 receptions in this game. It's a really good spot. He grades out great for his price point. He's chalky in tournaments, so he's not a lock in tournaments. You don't have to lock him in. He's a very good cash play, and he's a fine tournament play. I only warn you, though, don't be trying to stack Wayne Gallman with Daniel Jones and Evan Ingram. He doesn't correlate with the quarterback. He's not Saquon. He's not Austin Eckler. He's not Christian McCaffrey. He's not going to have 8 to 10 targets or even an 8-catch game. Like, the upside here for Wayne Gallman is he catches probably like 3 balls for like 15 yards. That's not correlating with your quarterback. So be careful in your team stacks and your game stacks that you're not correlating Wayne Gallman. I would not have Wayne Gallman in the same lineup with Daniel Jones and or Evan Ingram and Sterling Shepard if you're trying to stack it. It doesn't make sense to me. Mark Ingram. My interest in Mark Ingram has increased a lot as the week has gone on. Outside of week 1 when he was taken off the field early because it was a blowout against Miami, you've had Mark Ingram stay on the field for 60+% of the snaps the last 2 weeks, get the bulk of the carries. He leads the league with a 63% success rate on qualified candidates. 63%. What does success rate factor in? It just factors in a certain amount of yards you pick up on first down, second down, and third down relative to the rest of the league. And he leads the league with 63%. That's elite usage. This guy's looked really good. His DR, defensive yards above replacement, nobody is better than him on this slate. In terms of if you factored him out for anybody else on the slate, he has picked up the most yards in his neutral situation. So Mark Ingram looks really good, going to get all the goal line touches this week. A somewhat difficult matchup against this Cleveland Browns defensive front, but when you factor in that he just has so much upside on the ground because of that red zone role, I do like him. Now his price is $6,600. I much prefer Marlon Mack. I probably closely prefer David Johnson in that instance, but $6,600 on a thin slate I do like. Nick Chubb, 97% of the snaps last week. He seems to be like a 3-down back. They got away from not using him on 3rd downs last week. I hope that continues. Nick Chubb going to get a lot of goal line work. Nick Chubb seeing like 6 targets per game in the receiving game, which is good to see. It's pretty much a tough matchup for Nick Chubb at 6,400. I think I definitely prefer Marlon Mack. I prefer David Johnson. I probably prefer Mark Ingram, but he is viable due to his receiving game role. Leonard Fournette, same reason. He's viable due to his receiving game role. Tough matchup against Denver. Top 7 in run defense per Pro Football Focus right now. Leonard Fournette, just crazy ineffective, right? He had the 69-yard rush, very nice on Thursday Night Football. And that, or I think it was Thursday night, and that got him to like positive yardage on the day on a yards per carry perspective. Just absolutely terrible for Leonard Fournette. Finishes with like 63 yards after that long run. Crazy, but he's being involved in the passing game. He's a guy who has a very bad offensive line, but he's getting yards after contact like we imagine, and he just hasn't been in the red zone. Once this guy gets into the red zone more, he's going to get touches, all of them. He was on the field 100% of the snaps last week, 97% the week before. He's definitely in play, but it's a fringier play. Christian McCaffrey, I should also point out, speaking of red zone touches, 12 red zone touches so far this year for Christian McCaffrey. That's just crazy. Like, that is insane usage. That's why he's the most expensive guy in the slate. That's it for the running back position. No other interest. If you have interest in somebody else, that's fine. What I'm bringing you here is objective data. I'm trying to bring you objective data and information through about 40 hours of research so far this week alone. Yes, since Sunday. Been researching this slate since Sunday. I just try and bring you non-biased data. It's not me saying, I have a feeling he's going to do good this week, you should take a shot. No, it's me giving you information based on what we've seen in the past, based on what we've been hearing out of camp, based on the matchups, injuries, whatever it might be. So these are my takes, but they're objective takes. So that's the most I can say about that. Julio Jones, my wide receivers, actually, I should say. I filtered down this wide receiver pool. People are going to say, Sal, you have too many wide receivers. I get it, but I have 11 interests in wide receivers. That's not a lot. 11 yeses is not a lot if you're entering a lot of lineups. Your player pool should be like 40 to 50, at least maybe, if you're entering 150 lineups, which I'm not going to this weekend. But in terms of right now for a player pool, yeah, my cash game player pool is much more strict. It's much smaller, and if you have Patreon, you can see my cash game tiers. But right now, I have interest in Julio Jones against Adore Jackson or Malcolm Butler. He's too cheap. Right now, Keenan Allen's the highest priced or highest owned player on the slate, as he should be. Look, everything shapes up for Keenan Allen. Leads the league in air yards, leads the league in targets. Looks fantastic. You have Miami slot cornerback. I'm going to be missing this game. And you have back-to-back weeks where Keenan Allen gets to go up against a backup slot cornerback. Aaron Colvin was the cornerback for the Texans, got cut after week 1. And then you get this week, he's going to be going up in the slot against the backup cornerback, and he's going to get to avoid Xavier Howard. Just a fantastic spot. The ownership and matchup are very much highly up, or ownership and price are very much highly elevated this week, especially the ownership leading the slate right now. But I'm not too concerned overall with that. I still think it's a really good spot for him, and all I'm trying to do right now is find up the exact matchup that Keenan Allen is going to have this week as I pull it up on my phone here. Keenan Allen gets to go up against, pretty much Jamal Wiltz, who is not that great of a cornerback to begin with. Obviously, this Miami defense has been getting shredded. He's going to miss. So now you get a backup cornerback on a team that already has lost Minkah Fitzpatrick, and Xavier Howard seems to not be putting much effort in. If you watch the tape last week or the highlights against Amari Cooper, he was just jogging around the field. So yeah, Keenan Allen's fine in all formats. Sammy Watkins I really like. Sammy Watkins continues to lead this team in targets. The last 2 weeks, 62% of the snaps out of the slot last week, 80% the week before that. Look, he's not really going to have to face Darius Slay anyways, although Slay has not been that great this year. I get it, he got injured, but like people are overreacting to 2 weeks because he picked the ball off against Phillip Rivers to end the game. But his pass coverage has not been that good this year. Either way, though, a good spot for Sammy Watkins coming out of the slot. Look, people want to talk down on Sammy Watkins after blowing up week 1. Because Hardman and Robinson have had big touchdown weeks the last 2 weeks, right, scoring a touchdown. But Sammy Watkins has still been relevant, still leading the team in targets, still having good reception games with 60-plus receiving yards. Like, if he's doing that in games where everybody else around him is going off, you can be damn sure when finally Hardman doesn't catch an 80-yard touchdown or Robinson catch a touchdown, that Sammy Watkins, another breakout week is coming, and this is a really good spot in a dome for him. Cooper Kupp, my favorite wide receiver for the Rams, once again, 85% of the routes out of the slot last week. Just getting so much overall red zone usage. 4 targets, leading his team in red zone targets at the wide receiver position and also just target share. Really like that spot. He's the most relied on target of Jared Goff. Tyler Lockett, probably the best 6K play on the slate at the wide receiver position. 80% of his routes out of the slot last week. This is a really pace-up spot overall for Seattle. He's 7th in the league in air yards. Just the opportunities are fantastic for Tyler Lockett. This guy out of the slot is one of the most elite. Like, you have Keenan Allen out of the slot, which is very good. But Tyler Lockett is one of the most elite players out of the slot. He wasn't used all that much there last year because, obviously, shifting in and out. Doug Baldwin was injured for most of the year, shifting in and out other players. But this year, I was expecting like 60% of the routes out of the slot for Tyler Lockett. We saw 80 last week. I literally have it written down. That's incredible. This is a smash spot for Tyler Lockett. Terry McLaurin, too cheap, 4,500. He's going to get to go up against Janoris Jenkins. I've been saying it all week. Head on the swivel, Janoris Jenkins, because everybody's going right by him. What a terrible cornerback Janoris Jenkins is. Terry McLaurin, fantastic spot. Going to absolutely torch Janoris Jenkins this week. Really like it. 4,500 is just way too cheap. It's unusually cheap in my opinion. Larry Fitzgerald leads the league in routes run for any player, anybody, any position. 150 for old man himself. Father time, Larry Fitzgerald. Yeah, I like it. I like it in cash games. 94% of his routes out of the slot last week. He was on the field for 90+% of the snaps. Again, this team's just going to continue to play fast and run a ton of plays. Top 3 wide receivers in routes run, all Arizona Cardinals. 1, Larry Fitzgerald. 2, Damiere Byrd. And 3, Christian Kirk. All separated by 5 routes. So insane. Next up, Sterling Shepard out of the slot. Sterling Shepard's my favorite Giant this week. I like Daniel Jones. I like Evan Ingram. I think Wayne Gallman's in play. But Sterling Shepard's my favorite play. 95% of the snaps week 3. He saw 86% of his snaps out of the slot, which is obviously fantastic. And he was averaging top 5 overall separation last week. He's top 7 on the year in separation at the wide receiver position. 4.2 yards of separation is what he's generating per route run or on average. That's amazing. That's just fantastic. Like, you're out of the slot where you're already having a very good matchup and favorable matchup, especially this week against Washington, and now you're getting 4 yards of separation every time you run. I mean, Daniel Jones looks good already, especially some pocket awareness looked good last week as well. Didn't really crumble under pressure, especially being down by 18. And you're still getting that much separation for a young quarterback. He's obviously going to look your way. Sterling Shepard, my favorite play from the Giants, one of my favorite plays this week. Christian Kirk, 5,100. Yeah, 3rd in the league in routes run. We just mentioned it, 145. I think he's the favorite target. He leads the team in targets a little bit more than Larry Fitzgerald. I personally think he's the favorite target right now of Kyler Murray. It's just a matter of, can Kyler Murray stay fine? Kyler Murray had the worst second half out of any quarterback last week. He looked absolutely abysmal. Just like 6 stalled drives. It was terrible. DK Metcalf, I get to him in team stacks of Seattle. I like team stacking Seattle with Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett, and DK Metcalf. Run it back with 1 or 2 guys in Arizona. Metcalf right now has a 36%. He leads barely over Tyler Lockett, who has a 35%. 36% target share of air yards. He's just going to run seam routes down the left side, and he's going to have a very good matchup this week. Still just a fantastic matchup, and still going to get targets. Going to be about 6 or 7 targets I have projected for him this week. Still no Patrick Peterson for Arizona on the outside. Preston Williams, I love the guy. I love Preston Williams. Played 28, I believe, or in the mid-20s% of snaps week 1, 68% week 2, 96% last week for Preston Williams. Saw 12 targets, dropped a touchdown, still had a decent game, 4 catches for 68 yards. He's still somehow not above $4,000. You're going to have Devontae Parker going up against Casey Hayward, who missed practice yesterday, but keep an eye on it. You're going to have Jakeem Grant, what I would say is an underrated player in the league, Jakeem Grant, in the slot, going up against Desmond King, the best slot cornerback, a stud cornerback. I love Desmond King. But then on the outside, backup cornerback, they're playing musical chairs with their number 2 cornerback on the outside. They already have no Derwin James. They already have no Adrian Phillips. They're down 2 safeties. So you're going to have Preston Williams taking advantage of a bunch of secondary guys. Very talented rookie. He's Josh Rosen's favorite target. I mentioned 12 targets last week, 8 targets the week before, so 20 in the last 2 weeks. He had the most time with Josh Rosen in the preseason, and it's pretty obvious that Josh Rosen is forcing him the ball. Last week, he dropped a touchdown. He caught it, had 2 feet down in the end zone, then it popped out. They didn't review it. Last week, he caught like a 25-yard pass that was on a flea flicker that was underthrown. Otherwise, he was wide open for another touchdown. This guy's getting open. He's getting separation, and he's going to have a very good matchup this week against the Chargers secondary. I like that spot. Then just a ton of somewhat interest, right? Brandon Cooks definitely in play for tournaments, not so much cash. Marquise Brown at 5,800. If there's no Denzel Ward, I'm going to get to a lot of Marquise Brown. If there is Denzel Ward, he's a shutdown corner. I don't want any Marquise Brown. Marquise Brown, week 1, everybody goes, oh, he's only on the field for 15, 18% of the snaps. Well, now he's seeing 9 targets on average per week. He has 27 targets so far this year through 3 weeks. Marquise Brown is legit. He's seeing an elite 40% of his team's targeted air yards. Fantastic spot for Marquise Brown, if indeed Denzel Ward is out. Keep an eye on that. Demarcus Robinson, I put slightly ahead of Marquise Hardman, or McCole Hardman, not Marquise, because Demarcus Robinson's on the field for about 20 to 30% more snaps. They both have big play upside. I prefer Sammy Watkins to both of them, but we're in a spot where if you do want to stack the Chiefs, which is always viable with Patrick Mahomes, I prefer stacking it with Sammy Watkins, and then if you want one of the cheaper options, I'd go Robinson for 5,200, just slightly over Hardman, who's right there at 5,100. Kenny Golladay, a good spot to run it back with for the Chiefs. I already talked about how I like Kerryon Johnson. My favorite play, right there next to Kerryon, probably above him slightly, is going to be Kenny Golladay. I got it last week. Marvin Jones Jr., I got it, meaning not I said this, but just I get it, I guess. Marvin Jones Jr. was the guy who went off last week. That is something that will not stay consistent over Golladay. It was more so just the way that they schemed it up because Golladay was seeing double coverage by a porous Eagles secondary. If you have single coverage on a guy who profiles out similarly to Kenny Golladay, why not just throw to Marvin Jones Jr.? That's what they did. This week, I don't expect double teams. The Chiefs' secondary overall is not that good. Honey Badger has not been playing well. Bashawn Breeland has been terrible. Kendall Fuller in the slot, who is a average cornerback at best, has been very average this year. It's a better spot for Danny Amendola, but he's just not running enough routes. Danny Amendola is not a guy that I ever want to be playing in daily fantasy. Week 1, he did decent because of overtime because they ran 70 plays. This team's never going to run that many. They had a huge pace-up spot, probably by about almost 10 plays because they were facing Arizona. So, yeah, Kenny Golladay, I really like the spot. This Chiefs secondary is very suspect in my opinion, and it's a spot where potentially Detroit can be playing from behind. Julian Edelman, he practiced. The way that you beat Buffalo is short passes. They're his own defense. Philip Dorsett might be sexy this week. I'm not going there. There's a reason Buffalo has only given up 2 20-plus yard passes all year. That's because they don't let you throw deep. Their whole goal is to allow you to throw 5 to 10-yard passes in front of them. So no interest in Dorsett. Tre'Davious White is going to shadow Josh Gordon. No interest there. Josh Gordon got shut down for 2 catches, I think 19 yards against Xavier Howard, who is a very comparable cornerback to Tre'Davious White in terms of how skilled they are at being shadow corners. So Julian Edelman, the pass-catching running backs here are my options. I think Edelman is by far the most consistent with the highest floor out of anybody here for this game on New England. He practiced on Wednesday. He seems good to go. But at his price point, I just prefer other players. $6,500 I'd much rather get at the same price point to Kupp. I'd rather get for sure to Tyler Lockett. I'd rather save money, get to Fitzgerald, and maybe even Sterling Shepard. So he's in play, but not as much, obviously, indicated by the X on him. DeAndre Hopkins, I'm watching his ownership. His ownership's coming in around like 16, 15% on a couple of sites. That's fine. It's not low enough, though, for me to make. I was hoping it would come in at like 8 or 7 because Keenan Allen's so highly owned and Julio Jones is picking up some ownership. But right now it's coming in above Julio Jones. I get it. This is a very good secondary so far. James Bradbury and Deontay Jackson for Carolina look very good on the outsides at cornerback. But DeAndre Hopkins is a world beater. He can beat anybody. His target share is just ridiculous right now, like 12 more than any other wide receiver on this team. So he's always in play. Calvin Ridley. He's going to probably get to go up against Malcolm Butler and not face double teams that Julio probably will. That's a really good spot for too cheap Calvin Ridley at $5,000. And lastly, Trey Quinn, $3,000. Why is Trey Quinn this cheap? He's priced next to guys who haven't even played this year. Minimum price. He's run the 13th most routes in the entire league. Not even just for his position, not even just for his division or conference. The entire league, he's run the 13th most routes. Over 100 routes, right around 120 routes run this year. Look, he's not a high upside guy. I don't play him in GPPs, but he's cash game viable. He projects out right now close to 9 to 10 fantasy points for me. That's cash game viable at $3,000. It allows you to do a lot else with your lineup. It's just weird that DraftKings messed up his pricing that bad. And then I'll touch on some guys who became no's. Chris Godwin has now missed 2 days in a row, practice with a hip injury. Beat reporters are saying it's not looking good for him. I didn't have much interest or as much interest as the week went on anyways because he actually has a tough matchup. Mike Evans, I get it. People are going to say, Sally went off last week. Mike Evans actually has a tough matchup. This Rams secondary has looked pretty good so far this year. Safeties have looked really good. Marcus Peters looks like he's getting back to his 2 years ago form when he was with the Chiefs instead of last year when he was pretty terrible for the first half. But yeah, I'm just not going to get to this overall game at all. Jarvis Landry in the slot against Baltimore is actually a favorable spot, much more than Odell. Odell's going to have to face Marlon Humphreys, and this line overall for the Browns is just terrible. It's not giving Baker Mayfield any time to throw. Freddie Kitchens looks like a donkey out there calling the plays. You should have Monk be calling the plays. The former Tampa Bay coach, offensive coordinator, I believe. So it makes no real sense why these schemes are going the way that they are for the Browns. So it's limiting my interest in Jarvis Landry and Odell. If anything, I would get the Jarvis Landry in the receiving game because he has the best matchup coming out of the slot and running deeper routes than Odell right now. But I'm just overall not going to get there. Mike Williams probably sees shadow treatment from Xavier Howard. Mike Williams is fine in team stacks if you want to get there, but I elect not to get there at his price point. I think you can find much better plays, i.e. Terry McLaurin this week. Let's go to tight end. My tight end pool, I made sure to make it really deep. If you want my stats for tight ends and stuff, it's all right here. You can check it out on Patreon. Travis Kelce's definitely in play if you can afford him. He's not my tight end one. Right now, my tight end one is going to be between Evan Ingram and Darren Waller. Darren Waller faces the Colts, who are just allowing you to throw the ball to the tight end. They say, throw it to us, or throw it in front of us. They're his own defense like Buffalo. Darren Waller right now leads the league in receptions for tight ends, second only by 1 target behind Evan Ingram. averaging 9.67 targets per game. And this offense just runs through tight ends. Last year it did with Jared Cook. Darren Waller looks really good. And also to throw into things, Malik Hooker is going to be out 4 to 6 weeks for this Indianapolis secondary. And Darius Leonard, very popular, or I would say like a stud of the defense, the linebacker for the Colts, is still in the concussion protocol after missing last week. If one, well, we already know Malik Hooker's missing. If also Leonard misses, this is just a fantastic spot for Darren Waller. Like, unreal spot for a guy who still hasn't gotten in the end zone, for a guy who's up there in routes run, doesn't come off the field 95+% of the routes on the season or snaps. Yeah, it looks fantastic, running around every single time he's out there. I love Darren Waller this week. I love Evan Ingram this week. 5,700 is way too cheap. Again, I like Daniel Jones, Shepard, so stacking him with those two to create a team stack makes sense. Evan Ingram, though, right now is picking up ownership 3 times more than Darren Waller, so I favor Darren Waller there. Delaney Walker is like a meh, maybe. Like 4,800, you easily find the extra 400. Just find a cheaper defense and get to Darren Waller, in my opinion. Will Dissly, look, Arizona somehow is giving up 31.3 fantasy points a game to the tight end. First 3 weeks, you've had guys go off. Nick Vannett, not really a guy who runs a lot of routes, but he was just traded from Seattle to Pittsburgh, so you'll probably have Will Dissly, instead of playing 55% of the snaps, bump up into the 60% range. So a nice spot for Dissly. I think he's the best cheap option this week due to the matchup. But again, like you saw week 1, Delaney Walker, 2 touchdowns, middle of the field, was getting tons of easy receptions. Last week, you saw Austin Hooper, 2 touchdowns. We were talking about how he was my favorite tight end last week. 2 touchdowns. Saw a ton of targets in the middle of the field. Now you get Darren Waller, who's coming off of a 14 target, 13 reception game against that same team who wants you to throw it to Darren Waller. Yeah, I'll take that. So Dissly, fine for value, but probably not a guy that I'm going to try and prioritize in any format this week. So that's it. That is the final thoughts. Hopefully you all liked it. You can follow me on Twitter at SalVetriDFS. I create content every single day on this channel. Hit the subscribe button to help me out and grow this channel even more, reach more people. I'll be creating NBA content once the NBA starts in about a month or so, I think it is now. Fantastic. Can't wait for that. Thank you so much. Hit the subscribe button. If you want to be entered into a raffle for a free entry into my daily fantasy course, just comment down below who will be the best value wide receiver, point per dollar, most bang for your buck. It could be the top end guys. It could be the bottom end guys. It could be the middle range. Whatever you think is the best value wide receiver. Also, if you just want to get $100 off that course, you can comment down below, Sal, let me get that coupon because it's only good for the next week, and I'll send you the link for that coupon. So I appreciate it. Thank you all for tuning in. I'll be on Awesemo's show Saturday at 11 a.m. I'll be putting out content on Patreon throughout the weekend, and I'll also be making a little bit more content tomorrow as well. So thank you all so much. Be sure to check out Fantasy Draft. Rake-free contests are fantastic. Reach out to me if you have any questions on Twitter. I'll try and do my best to get back to you. My name's Sal. You already know that. Peace out, gang.
Hey, hold up. 1 second. Check out this page. If you haven't yet subscribed, hit the subscribe button, all right? And if you're interested in Patreon, if you're not already a Patreon, you can hit that button on Patreon, become a Patreon, it will take you right there. You can also check me out on Twitter at SalVetriDFS. And hey, if you're interested, this next video that's about to pop up, why don't you check it out as well. See ya.